Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Monday. It is August the 11th, and as usual, the weekend sometimes doesn't feel long enough, does it? This was one of those moments. I felt like I was working through the weekend, and I'm going to share with you some of the stuff that we were working on. A little bit of a heads up for those of you that are listening early enough in the day at 2 p.m. Central Time at 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to go on with Alex Jones, share a little bit of information. It's always fun to go on with Alex. I was watching something. He was talking about meats and synthetic butter, which I've seen a little push on. Bill Gates food products. It's like, you know, Alex Jones is sometimes way out there on the limb, and sometimes he's just right on the money. This fake food idea seems to be about right. So today we're going to be talking about the purge. Actually, before I put my phone in the Faraday bag, I think I'm going to read you guys something. I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, but I think I am. So let's do that. A little quick preview. Today's podcast, something that I saved and shared with my friends in the Suspendables chat group. So you guys are now part of the inside crew. Quote, I have believed in the metaphor of God as the all-knowing gardener who prunes us and shapes us. That's something that was put out on LinkedIn, which is a cesspool, by Spencer Evans, the now terminated former special agent in charge of Las Vegas. And additionally, he was the Deputy Assistant Director of Human Resources during the COVID tyranny, 100% COVIDian. And then I got this from an FBI agent who actually understands what's wrong with the FBI. Quote, we have arrived at a moment when we must remove the limb to save the patient and not just use a scalpel to take out the rot. That doesn't mean that the people who run the FBI know that. And that's problematic. I'm actually starting to see the pressure campaign go online. We're starting to see some FBI agents take to Twitter, voice their opinions. They think they got dirt on me. What they have is the same perjury that went out to the House Democrats 2 years ago. So, at the end of the day, we're going to be talking about the purge and the terror that exists when weaponized government comes from you. They're not wrong, the Democrats that are crying about this. They're not wrong, this group of former intel people that are referring to themselves as steady state. The steady state is their take on the deep state. But all they're proving is that they are a deep state, that the people who look out for each other, the mutual admiration societies of retired former special agents and intelligence officials, they are the problem. Someone asked me, what's the solution? The solution is start hacking off the limbs that are rotted. We need less of it because they are incredibly dangerous to American liberties. Not the left, not the right, Americans, period. This was never about politics, and it never should be about politics. And unfortunately, although there are people who are getting it done right in the Trump administration, Donald Trump is part of the problem when it comes to not knowing what the issues are. And he's proving it with the thing that we're going to talk about today, removing the homeless and crime from Washington, D.C. He doesn't even know what the tools that he has available are, and he doesn't know how to use them. And that's not necessarily his fault because he's not a guy that's run government. But the people that are advising him are either morons or, even worse, they are nefarious and they want to see things carry on the way that they have. I am not okay with that. And I don't think you should be either. I think it's really dumb and it's really dangerous. Let's start with a sponsor read. We're going to get into today's program. Got a lot to cover here. So let's lead off with my friends over at My Patriot Supply. If you're worried about any of these things, like it's not a totally unreasonable thing to do, mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle is where you can go and prepare yourself. It's not just hot in the summer. It's been historic. There are flash flood warnings at a 40-year high. It's not slowing down. Some towns have been underwater. Roads have been washed out. All kinds of things are common in crisis zones. It's usually the scene of people standing in line and waiting. They're waiting for bottled water. They wait for food. They wait for someone to show up and save them. Do you want that to be you? Or do you want to be able to prepare so that you don't have to wait for someone else to take care of you? What if help takes days? What if it takes no time at all because it never shows up? Is the system built to protect you? I'm going to prove to you today with some of the information that in fact it is not. It is run by people who are looking out for themselves, and you're simply part of the currency of the realm sometimes. Our government can barely handle one emergency, let alone dozens. Your local governments are no better. Folks, prepare yourself with My Patriot Supply. That should be for everything. It doesn't matter whether it's civil unrest or natural disasters or anything else. MyPatriotSupply.com/KYLE. Right now, they're giving away 4 weeks of free emergency food with your purchase of a 3-month emergency food kit. That's the deal I have. So buy 3, get 4 months. That's a pretty solid option. Again, you're giving yourself 120 days worth of personal insurance against God knows what's coming your way. MyPatriotSupply.com/KYLE. Link in the show description. My finger is wagging downward towards the notes. If you were to scroll down, you would see that. All right, check them out. Make sure you guys are prepared so you're not relying on a very ineffective federal, state, or probably your local government as well. Let's get into today's program right now. All right, so we're going to go through sort of a list of things. Some of them are directly related. Some of them are things that I think that we should just talk about because they talk about a broader problem. Let's start with number one. This is coming from NBC. This is actually kind of a local news story with national implications. An Afghan interpreter who evaded death during the war in Afghanistan met a grim fate in Texas. You're looking at a pretty awful story here. And again, this goes to how bad is it? How awful is the situation? Do we need to do amputations? Do we have the time to be interested in individual tiny solutions at a scalpel level, or is it machete time? Another Afghan immigrant is accused of stabbing the military interpreter 20 times. Why was it? Oh, because he was frustrated with how slow the system was moving, officials say. So that is your headline. Let's get into what the actual story says. The news of Abdul Niazi's death arrived via a chilling phone call. It was March the 26th at the end of Ramadan. His wife wanted to know whether she should expect her husband, a former U.S. military interpreter who lost both legs in a bomb blast in Afghanistan and became one of Houston's most well-known advocates for the new Afghan migrants. It was almost time to break the day's fast. She recalled that they got a phone call from his cell phone, and the man on the other end of the line said, "I'm not your husband. I killed your husband." So put yourself in that situation. Ladies, you pick up the phone, your husband's phone number on the caller ID, and someone said, "I just killed your husband." The shock of the call intensified when the family learned that authorities had alleged in bail documents in the Harris County District Court that an Afghan national who sought help from Niazi was accused of stabbing him more than a dozen times because he was frustrated about the United States illegal immigration or the refugee immigration situation. Now, I told you that these people came in by 100,000 or so. This is a legacy of the Biden administration. They flew a bunch of people in on military cargo jets. They landed them on military bases. And then they just didn't have a plan. This is a legacy of what happened because of the failed withdrawal. And all of this stuff, it all kind of goes to the same root core. You put the wrong people in, you put a guy like Joe Biden in, or you put whoever the hell was actually running the show when Joe Biden was there. They failed in Afghanistan. They betrayed the legacy of, millions of veterans who fought in the global war on terror. They brought in a bunch of the enemy. And this 34-year-old guy decided, oh, you know what? I'm really frustrated with the fact that the United States is not taking care of me properly. I'm going to go stab the guy that is my advocate, who was, in fact, the kind of person that we don't mind getting here. I met all kinds on these Afghan refugee camps when I was working at Fort Bliss and when I was working out at Holloman Air Force Base. There are people that you would not be sad to have as your neighbor. They were educated. They were multilingual. They had skills that were applicable to American businesses. And then there were people that were shitting on the side of the road. They would just walk off into the desert, drop trowel, and take a crap as we drove past the roads on the military base. So you had all kinds. These were the same people that walked into the showers, didn't know what running water was, so they just crapped on the floor. Or they crapped next to their beds because they basically lived like animals where they were. And so you imported a variety of people from like urban dwelling, modern skills human beings who could integrate into this society and have for all generations. They found out what was going on. Or you had people who basically belonged in caves. The crazy thing is, this guy is out on bail, on personal recognizance. It was a $750,000 bail after he stabbed a man to death because of something that man was not in charge of. How on earth can this country continue onward? And so all this talk about redistricting in Texas, I think this has something to do with it. The fact that illegal aliens were being counted in the census, that's a problem. Donald Trump is trying to fix some of these things with a scalpel and some of these things with the machete. The right answer might be to deport all of these people that are waiting on the process. Sorry, go back to Afghanistan. You're not our problem. Why? Because you're not American. And we voted for this thing that I kept hearing over and over again. I don't think it means what we think it means. We're having this like Inigo Montoya situation, right? I don't think that word means what you think it means. America first should mean that Americans come first, that this country comes first. That's not what we're getting. We're getting like America sort of. The right answer would have been America only, like a completely isolationist answer. Is that great for all the global people? No, but is it good for Lindsey Graham? No, it's not. But is it probably the right answer when it comes down to like, how do you solve these problems? You start here, you get your house in order, and you don't go out there and start telling people. It's like if you went to the HOA president who was calling you and citing you because your blinds were 3/4 open and they were not allowed to be open during the hours of 9 to 5 or some kind of crazy like HOA rule. And so that person didn't have their house in order, had like stinking dead animals in their front yard. And then they were out there citing you because of the way that your lawn was half an inch too long or you didn't have your blinds open properly. We have to get our own house in order, and we haven't done it. And more importantly, if you're going to do America only, if you're going to do America first, don't you think that you should look at the American federal government and say, hey, our government is full of corruption. It is incredibly dangerous to Americans. So we don't have time to try to figure out whether or not we're going to vet Afghans who flew in here and were like hanging on to the landing gear. Do you guys remember the visuals? They were hanging on to the landing gear of Air Force, transports and falling off from the sky at 2,000 feet, hitting the ground, terminal velocity. Why? Because the people who were trying to come to the United States didn't even understand like what a plane was. And then they get mad and they stab a guy who theoretically, according to everything I can read here, including the former Marine Corps platoon commander who worked with this translator, they said he was a hero. They said he was an absolute stud. And the guy who stabbed him, this 37-year-old guy named Mosula Sahil, 37, he's accused of first-degree murder. So he got a $750,000 bail. He's out on personal recognizance right now. Oh, sorry. They actually asked for $750,000. I misread that. I misunderstood it when I read the story. They asked for $750,000 bond. They failed to indict him, and so he's just walking around free. No payment required. There's no bond at all. He called and confessed to this crime. Awesome. And when asked what happened, the prosecutor said, "Yeah, we just didn't get it done. We failed." Okay. How many other ridiculous sort of situations exist in this country like that, where you're looking and you're thinking, oh, is the federal government going to come save us? Is the state government going to come? Is the local government going to do their job? We're this far away, I think, from people getting completely Western. I think that people in this country are expecting things. We're getting promised. I saw another sort of tweet from Dan Bongino talking about summer crime, talking about the summer heat initiative and how they're getting rid of murder in America, that they're basically solved murder as the FBI, which is insane. And he said, this is not even the beginning of the beginning. Tune in next week. Have we found out what shook Dan Bongino to his core the other day? Was it corruption? Is that what we heard? I guess so. I guess that's what they said. While I'm talking on the nature of like the foreign focus that needs to be domestic, I just want to cover this briefly because I don't have a slide about it and I don't have a story talking about it. It actually wasn't a mainstream news article, but it actually does bother me. Donald Trump has re-endorsed Lindsey Graham, who believes that the most important thing in the United States is not to focus on America only or America first. He's like still worried about his money coming from Ukraine. I wish this guy was not who represented you, South Carolina, but here he is going on, a friendly news organization, Meet the Press, NBC. This is the real Republican. This is what real Republicans look like. Again, if you are a conservative person, if you're an America-only person, you're not a real Republican. You're a rhino. That's what you are. You're in name only because you actually don't believe in the things that your political party actually puts out. Lindsey Graham is like peak Republican, as far as I can tell. Here he is explaining the real problems in America. This is what your tax dollars should go to.
But I have every confidence in the world that the president is going to go to meet Putin from a position of strength, that he's going to look out for Europe and Ukrainian needs to end this war honorably, and it's time to end this war honorably. But how we do it will be historical, and I'm confident President Trump will get a good deal for all.
Oh, good. Oh, good. So President Trump's going to get a good deal for all, and that's going to be for, he's looking out for European needs and Ukrainian needs, because that's really, is that what you voted for, guys? Is that it? I mean, J.D. Vance seems to understand this. I don't envy that man's job. He's walking out and trying to walk through this minefield. He did an interview with Fox, of course, and his interview, he's like, I think he's actually telling us the quiet part out loud during this, but he's going to talk about whether or not, shouldn't they pay for their own weapons? Isn't that the way it's supposed to work?
To your point about weapons, what we said to the Europeans is simply, first of all, this is in your neck of the woods. This is in your back door. You guys have got to step up and take a bigger role in this thing. And if you care so much about this conflict, you should be willing to play a more direct and a more substantial way in funding this war yourself. I think the president, and I certainly think that America, we're done with the funding of the Ukraine war business. We want to bring about a peaceful settlement to this thing. We want to stop the killing. But Americans, I think, are sick of continuing to send their money, their tax dollars to this particular conflict. But if the Europeans want to step up and actually buy the weapons from American producers, we're okay with that, but we're not going to fund it ourselves anymore.
I mean, yeah, I actually agree with all those things. Again, J.D. Vance says the things that people would agree with. The problem is that I don't think that's actually what the policy is. It doesn't seem like the real story. Again, I don't think that he represents what the real Republican Party looks like. He's saying the things that I want to hear, because that's true. I do think the Europeans should fund it if they care, and I don't. And I don't want my money going there. If they want to buy American weapons, knock yourself out. And then you have the alternative. You have the Lindsey Graham out there saying the soft sell stuff. And then you have Donald Trump backing Lindsey Graham. Doesn't that seem problematic? The other thing that does seem problematic, and it's not related to either of these things, it has to do with these clips. About 50% of the clips that we grab, when I look at them, they're completely fine. The audio and the video are in sync. And then when they go into the broadcast software, they come out of sync for some reason. So I'm not doing that on purpose to make you guys feel like crazy people. We'll try to decode whatever it is, but there's some sort of bug that's making that happen. Here's Lindsey Graham. He was at a fundraising event, and he got a phone call unexpectedly from Donald Trump. I'm sure it was totally unexpected that it happened while he was standing on the stage. And here he is able to tout the support, the 100% support of Donald Trump. So for all of you people that are out there that say, oh, Donald Trump, it's 3D chess. Yeah, friends close, enemies close. None of these things are real. Donald Trump makes some good decisions, which are true, and I'm going to actually share some today, and a bunch of crappy ones, like backing Lindsey Graham. And here's that phone call.
I just want to thank everybody. And Lindsey, thank you so much. You've been my friend. I know you're in a big race, and I don't think it's going to be a contest, but I have a feeling you're going to do very well. You have for a long time.
Thank you very much.
And Lindsey Graham, just so you know, full endorsement, Trump's full endorsement. He's a great guy. Every time I needed him, he was there for me. But I just want to thank everybody.
So there you heard it. Full endorsement. Okay. That's not an impersonator. That's the real deal. Is that what you want? Primary Thomas Massey, full endorsement, Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham has like a 20, I think, the last time I looked at his Liberty score. He votes with Democrats all the time. That's what he does. He votes for anything that spends more money and does the exact opposite of that sort of America first, America only mentality. So I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Again, Donald Trump, not a perfect human being. This is a great argument against idolatry, which is an ongoing theme of this program. If you look at somebody, I had somebody over the weekend that was like, Seraphin, are you with Donald Trump or against him? It's like, hey, soft brain. I'm not with anybody. I'm with me. I'm with my wife and my kids. I'm with things that are right when people do things that are right. You are not going to get me to sign up for like whatever somebody says as my proxy. There's nobody that I'm willing to cede my agency to and say, I endorse what this person says 100% of the time. Why? Because they don't know what I know and I don't know what they know, but I guarantee you we don't agree on everything. Even those of you that get really, really riled up when you find out like, well, Seraphin doesn't say the same things that I think. I don't ask you to believe what I think. I'm just telling you what I believe. And if you believe it, great. If you don't, you put it in the comments and I read those. And then we can come to a decision. They used to call that thing critical thinking, where you hear different sides of the same story, and then you try to figure out, like, oh, like, what do I think of that? Which one of those people has more weight? Which one has more credibility? Which one of those arguments has more gravitas and evidence? And then I'm going to go with the one that makes the most sense to me. Do you know what doesn't make sense? This. This is an NBC story. Sorry, this is a CNN story. Trump zeroes in on federal takeover of D.C. I flubbed the source because multiple different agencies, we've got CBS and ABC and Fox all covering the same story. And I'm going to hit all of them because I think it tells a broader story. All right. Trump zeroing in on a federal takeover of Washington, D.C. as FBI patrols the streets. So let's just start there. What you're looking at on the screen is a picture of the Washington Monument. I've actually seen gangs of Utes, aka young black kids between the age of like 12 and 18 that are on four-wheelers and dirt bikes ripping up that grass that is our property as Americans. And it's pretty disgusting, and almost nothing happens to them. DC Metro PD lets them get away all the time. President Donald Trump is expected to ramp up efforts to curb crime in the nation's capital on Monday as he threatens a federal takeover of Washington, D.C. And the city officials largely remain deferential to him. There's probably a good reason. If there was ever a city that represented exactly how weak, stupid, and bad the federal government can do things, it is Washington, D.C. And I don't think a federal takeover is the right answer. There's an argument that you should probably cede it to Maryland, where they took the property from in the first place. That's fine. Maryland is not America. Everything north of the Potomac, not America, as far as I can tell. Give it away. And then leave a small cluster of federal buildings that are under federal jurisdiction, the same way a military base might be. That might be the right way to go. But this district, nobody fathomed that D.C. would be a place where people congregated, not when they built it. Nobody fathomed the amount of power that the federal government would have. But let me tell you one thing that I can tell you definitively with evidence is a terrible idea. The FBI patrolling the streets of your nation's capital. Why would that be? How do we know? Oh, because we did that. And I say we because I was one of the people that was told to go walk around with a freaking plate carrier on and FBI markings in June and July and September of 2020. When they were doing the BLM riots across the country, there was this attempt to slow down certain areas, not all of Washington, D.C., by the way. They totally left open the White House North Lawn. But they already did that. And I'm going to show you what the result was later. Okay, so Donald Trump has planned to ramp up. They want 450 officers expected to participate in a surge of federal law enforcement, called for as many as 130 FBI agents to patrol Washington, D.C. with D.C. police as part of an increased presence patrol. Sorry, that they said an increased federal presence. I'll call it a presence patrol. Those of you who've been in the military, you know that a presence patrol is when you walk around so that the enemy knows you're there. That's the entire reason for it. It can be provocative, so you can provoke contact, and then you can go and you can draw them into conflict, and then maybe you can eliminate them. It can be just to suppress them, to walk around and let them see you and them go, oh, we're going to go operate somewhere else. There's different reasons for a presence patrol, but those are the primary ones. The primary part of their job will be driving around the city, running license plates for stolen vehicles and warrants, said a source familiar with the matter to CNN. It's not your typical FBI agents, and it's not typical for FBI agents in general to patrol with local police departments. Let's talk about it. I was one of like a dozen people that I was aware of that had the ability to run license plates from my vehicle. Mostly what happens is FBI agents who want to run a license plate, the way that you'd see like in a computer-aided dispatch machine and a laptop that a local cop would have. Normally what would happen is they would just type it in. An FBI agent will call it in, either via radio or cell phone, to the radio room at the Washington field office. And then they would give that information, and then it would take anywhere from, let's say, 5 minutes to an hour and a half for that dispatch person to run the plates and give you the information and send you the email. And they would usually send it to you in this ridiculous format where they would send you it and then they would send you another email with a password so that they were disconnected, even though this is not national security information, even though local cops can get this on their phones or on their tablets, like in their car. FBI agents can't do that. They don't have the tools to get it. Running NCIC checks was one of the few things that like my team actually went out and did. And I knew almost nobody in the 1,000 agents or so that worked in Washington, D.C. that could do that. So who are they going to get to go run these plates? And why is having an additional 130 FBI agents rolling around going to make any bit of difference? They've already done foot patrols previously. Donald Trump said that we're going to make our capital safer and more beautiful than ever before. The homeless will have to move out immediately. We'll give you a place to stay, but far from the capital. Why? Why are we going to give them a place to stay? This is the same problem that I had with the person that called in. We had a caller 2 weeks ago. Zach called in and told me that we really need to give money to gender like reassignment surgeries. Why? Why do we need that? Why do we need to give any money for healthcare from the federal system? I just want you to show me, where does it say that in the Constitution? What makes me responsible for feeding or housing the homeless in Washington, D.C.? And why doesn't the abundant government that exists there? Washington, D.C. is like easily the worst example. I'm going to show you a couple other little headlines here. This is CBS and ABC. They're the worst example of what local governments could look like. Why? Because they get their money directly from the federal government and they're accountable to the federal government. And they're a like 96% Democrat city. Trump says the homeless should leave D.C. immediately after floating a federal takeover of the Capitol. Newsflash. It's all federal anyway. They have to go to Congress to get their funding. It's the most dysfunctional thing you could figure out. And then the other people attach stuff to it. Trump holds a news conference on crime in D.C., threatening a federal takeover, blah, 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 blah. All of this stuff is great. Do you know how great it is? Washington, D.C. was the employer. The city of Washington, D.C. was the employer of a man that I helped arrest for homicide. And you go, well, that's fine. Like sometimes people break bad, right? People could do the wrong thing. They could get involved and kill another person. This guy's homicide was involved in dealing fentanyl that actually ended up killing a college student out in Virginia. So interstate commerce, drugs involved, contraband, etc. Here's the problem. That guy was already a convicted murderer. I kid you not. He had been convicted of second-degree murder. I think he served somewhere between 8 and 12 years. And then he got out. And then he got a freaking job with the city of Washington, D.C. The city government hired him. And so he dealt drugs out of his federal building that was owned by the District of Columbia to other drug dealers, and it ended up killing someone. And so you go, oh, well, that seems really problematic, but that's just one data point, Kyle. This is just one case. We actually went up the chain, and I helped arrest the guy who was his supplier, and his supplier was also a convicted murderer who lived in Washington, D.C. His supplier had been convicted of first-degree murder. Do you understand how absurd this is? You've hired murderers to work in your government, and then you're shocked that by giving them a job, and you thought that like giving them a job and a little bit of like a solid reputation, they get to wear a dress shirt to work. This guy that we arrested, the second-degree murderer, he wore a dress shirt every single day, slacks, nice belt, clean shoes. He had a home that was nice. He had a Mercedes, probably because he was selling drugs. He had a really nice motorcycle, which caught us off guard because we didn't know about the motorcycle. And the day that we went to go arrest him, he actually came zipping out of the garage on like this orange motorcycle. And everyone was like, wait, shit, well, who is that? Like, is there a motorcycle in play? Nobody had run the NCIC. Why? Because FBI agents don't have that. And the case agents didn't have the ability to run all of his known vehicles. It wasn't something that we knew was coming. Ended up following in. Yeah, we got him without incident. Then we got his buddy. 2 murderers taken off the street for murder. Again, shocking, working for the District of Columbia. The rod is very, very deep. I don't think the federal takeover of that is going to be the right answer. I think cede it to Maryland. Let them figure out what the hell's wrong with them. That's the only way you're going to get it. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to let you know how I know this is a bad idea. Not just the evidence that they don't have the tools or that they're not trained. We actually tried this before, and I'm going to show you that problem and the problems that came from it, they weren't corrected. Not even a little bit. They're still existing, and the people who actually created that problem, not only do they still work for the FBI, they've all been promoted. And so that goes to the point about this purge that you're hearing the leftist media talk about. Before we do, let's talk about ways you can protect yourself, not just from your companies that you're working with, but the federal government also just had another massive data breach. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on this week. AT&T had a data breach, 184 million login credentials. Yeah, 184 million, complete with usernames, passwords, email addresses, left unencrypted, wide in the open. If you happen to use the same password or usernames on multiple sites, you're exposed on that kind of stuff. This data is circulating around the dark web. Scammers can shop for their next victim. These are not old logins. These are like current bank accounts, email providers, healthcare portals, government services. Everybody leaves themselves open at some point in time. Our government's probably one of the worst. So then criminals don't even need to hack anymore. They just log on with your information. They can buy this data. If you want to take your name out of the pile and keep somebody who's actually looking out for you and making sure that your name is actually not out there being sold, check out my friends at Patriot Protect. It's patriot-protect.com/Kyle. When you go and do the fill out, make sure you use my name at checkout. You'll save 15% on an annual subscription. It's dollars per month. That makes it down to pennies per day. And the big thing is this. You want this sort of ounce of prevention instead of having to pay for a pound of cure. People get scammed all the time for small amounts and big amounts. The small amounts are usually in the thousands. The big amounts are in the tens and hundreds of thousands. If you have significant resources, you can protect it for very cheap, and it's worth doing. Patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Keep your name, your address, your phone number out of those things. I'm going to show you. I was able to find the address of an FBI agent who's a senior executive. It took me just a few minutes. I used one of the data search websites that these people actually scrub. So check them out. Link in the show description. Worth your time. Let's go ahead and talk about this failure, shall we? This is the failure. Some of you are not able to see the link, are not able to see this presentation. So let me describe it to you. It's a black and white photograph. There's a man in a suit with his back to us, and around the corner of a room with sort of like a U-shaped table. Remember, this was mid-COVID. This is on June the 4th of 2020. You see a series of people wearing khaki pants and body armor, mostly with their hands in their pockets, guns on their belt, FBI badges, and placards on their chest and their belt lines. All their faces are redacted. This is a photograph that was released by the Oversight Project. My friend Mike Howell put this out on X about a year ago. And these are all the members of the so-called NEAL Team 6. NEAL Team 6 was the group of agents that knelt for BLM, ostensibly because they were going to de-escalate a criminal action where they were told kneel or there was going to be violence. The crowd that was in Washington, D.C. that was looking to get a political statement out of the federal agency got exactly what they wanted without a threat of violence. You can look at the background comms, which were between people like Larissa Knapp, who's since retired, Jennifer Moore, who helped get rid of me, since retired, Stacey Moy, and others. These were all the people that were in charge of the, wait for it, the Washington field office. And this is one of the taskings that Stephen Jensen was required to do, unmask this photograph. Now, I used to work in the Washington field office, so I know a little bit about how it works. What I can tell you is that there is an official photographer. I think there's actually 3 of them. They had an intern, a guy that had retired from National Geographic, and a woman named Jennifer, who was about 6 feet tall and about 300 pounds. And all of them were the official archivists of that field office. They would show up at major events. They would go out there for publicity stunts. And most likely, that's who took this black and white photograph, which commemorates Chris Wray talking and hugging and consoling the NEAL Team 6 members who were patrolling Washington, D.C. and took a knee because they were concerned that the crowd might get violent despite no evidence of violence. The internal comms, which have been released and are heavily redacted, show exactly what I'm saying. The FBI conclusively determined that there was no actual imminent threat to these people, and yet they took a knee anyway. Why did they take a knee? Because that's not what the FBI is designed to do. They're not actually able to do this. Quote, what the Bureau asked those agents to do is go out on foot patrol, something they were never trained to do. I can confirm, I was never trained for foot patrol. They were asked to be police officers, said a former FBI official. In no way were they making a political statement. I disagree with that part. They were not qualified to do what they did. But that's what happens when you hire not cops and then ask them to do the job of cops. You know, the thing that Kash Patel keeps saying about the FBI. Let good cops be cops. It results in this picture. Men and women, primarily women though, on one knee with their hands in front of them, wearing body armor that says FBI, genuflecting to a leftist political cause. So you think about that, because Trump is setting up for that optic. That's what's going to happen. That's what happens when you put them out there. You're not going to stop violent crime in Washington, D.C. You're not going to immediately get rid of the homeless people with these FBI agents. Look at them. And in front and center, what you see is a woman named Sarah Linden. Now, Sarah was a supervisor at that time. She was a special supervisory special agent, a GS-14. She was promoted not long after to ASAC, which is a GS-15 position. And that's a pretty senior job in the FBI. It's the top of the GS pay scale. She went on to become an SESer. She was the acting special agent in charge of the criminal division, even though she didn't have that experience. And then you see this headline from the Washington Examiner, which came out in February, right when the Trump administration was in there. And the folks that were running it, guys like Brian Driscoll were the number one at the FBI. Kash Patel was in the process of being sworn in. FBI puts BLM take the knee agent in charge of the Russian counterintelligence program. You cannot make this stuff up. This story was written by a guy named Jonathan Schindler. It happened about a week before Kash Patel was actually confirmed. Reforming the FBI is one of the most pressing national security priorities for the second Trump administration. No evidence of that, by the way. They put the wrong guys in, unfortunately. And just how the FBI's root and branch reform is urgently required has been revealed with troubling news from Bureau headquarters. Donald Trump is promising to clean the FBI of its woke misadventures. Its woke business continues as usual. Intelligence community sources with direct knowledge tell me that a senior agent who knelt on duty during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protest in Washington, D.C., was promoted to one of the FBI's most prized jobs, placed in charge of Russian counterintelligence at the National Security Branch. There she is, all 100 and extra 50 pounds of her. Sarah Linden wearing a mask, doing the Covidian thing. Multiple people in there. Amy Oakes is sitting right there in the back. She was promoted. She used to sit next to me over on the in the skiff when I worked Chinese CI. There's another woman that was sent off to a LEGAT position. She was able to go hang out in Australia. That was super nice. And of the people in that photograph, as far as I can tell, I've named 4 of them to the FBI, to people in the FBI that were looking for them, and they were able to uncover 6 of them, and they've had 6 months. 6 of them to include my 4. So they found 2 people. And why is it? It's because Stephen Jensen was in that job and he didn't make it a priority. So I'm going to go on Alex Jones today and we're going to share some information. It's going to be fun. I'm going to share Phil Kennedy's thread right now, which was a hypothetical idea that the FBI agents who were involved in this have 72 hours to turn themselves in, to self-identify to management that they were involved in that, and then just figure out what happens next. They can give their reasons. They can maybe have a justification for it. But that should be investigated, and you should know who they were and why. And here's the funny thing. There was a black woman who was out there, female agent, who was kind of sassy, as I recall. She didn't kneel. So you've got the one female black person that's out there that didn't take a knee for BLM, and everybody else who did. Why was that? And why did they all get promoted? The shenanigans are still afoot out there. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And so when you hear these articles that say that there's a purge happening at the FBI, it's not enough. Again, Spencer Evans went out, and I read his quote to start the show off. We're looking for God as a gardener, and he's pruning us. No, we need God with a machete, and he needs to be chopping back the jungle growth. This is the Fox News story that came out. Ex-government officials pen letter blasting Kash Patel's FBI purge. The Steady State Group accuses Kash Patel and Bongino of dismantling FBI independence. By the way, I have another name for you today. I have 2. One of them looks like they've been handled. The other one still needs to be. And there's a bunch more. This is just a taste. I'm only going to be able to give you guys tastes of this. But what I'm giving you evidence is that across the FBI, the same people who were problematic in 2020, the same people who allowed the nonsense to happen in 2016, that allowed the intelligence community to launder Hillary Clinton talking points into the mainstream discussion with legitimacy coming from intel sources, those same people still work there. A group of former FBI, intelligence, diplomatic, and national security officials released a letter blasting FBI Director Kash Patel, Deputy Director Dan Bongino for firing several Bureau agents, saying they were targeted for not being loyal to President Trump. It's not enough. I'm on the other side of this. We agree, but not for the same reasons. They're calling it a purge. I already saw what the purge looked like. They identified every single person who said no to the mRNA vaccines. because of the way that they were developed, because of their religious beliefs. Do you know who enforced that? Spencer Evans. He was promoted. He was held onto. He was reportedly fired before Kash Patel got in, and then he was redeemed and allowed to stay for another 6 or 7 months. And now God is a gardener, he says. The group has dubbed themselves the Steady State, and they claim that agents like Brian Driscoll, Michael Feinberg, Walter Gardena were fired as part of a campaign to dismantle the FBI's long-standing independence, which they call, they said they're setting up a tool of political loyalty. Newsflash. This is what the tool for political loyalty looks like. A bunch of agents standing around with their hands over their junk, talking to Chris Wray because some lady named Larissa Knapp said that they were doing the right thing, even though there was no evidence that they were doing the right thing because she didn't investigate it. And that this whale of a human being took a knee and now is in charge of Russian counterintelligence. These guys have no idea what they're doing. And they made a martyr out of this guy. They blew it. I got another word from another agent that's out there in the Western states. And he said, the worst thing they could have done was get rid of Brian Driscoll. Now, maybe Brian Driscoll needed to be somewhere in a lower division, but he got set up. And the problem is they had already turned him into a folk hero of the resistance, whether or not Driscoll wanted to be a hero of the resistance. By all accounts, Driscoll is a good guy. The guy you're looking at on the screen, Brian Driscoll was the #1 at the FBI, and he wasn't even supposed to be. He was accidentally put into the acting director role. I know people that worked with this guy for decades, literally like 20 years. People that knew him from HRT, people that knew him from New York. And by all accounts, not only was he a really good case agent and a great teammate, he actually did what he's supposed to do. Imagine if people had told Spencer Evans, hey, you got to fire Kyle Seraphin because he refuses to put on a mask and he won't do a nasal swab every 72 hours, which, by the way, about a month after that happened, a federal court also agreed with my position that it was completely unlawful and it shouldn't be done. So I was 30 days too soon, as always. Imagine if Spencer Evans did what Brian Driscoll said, which is like, look, dude, you can maybe get rid of this guy for something he did, but you have to go through the process. And the process is you have to investigate him. You have to make allegations. You have to substantiate the allegations. He's a military veteran, so you have to give him the opportunity to appeal it through the MSPB. And by the way, nobody said that the pilot, who also was the case agent on Mar-a-Lago, needed to be fired. He just shouldn't be flying the director's jet and rubbing shoulders with the current FBI director when he was one of the lead people who investigated the current president. That seems problematic. So this guy stepped up and he just was like, no, you can't do that. That's not what the system is designed to do. Everything that the suspendables recommended, by the way, every single thing that we recommended to Kash and Dan was so that you would not have this problem. Brian Driscoll is going to sue and win against the FBI for them removing him inappropriately. What they did is going to be found unlawful. I can just tell you right now, it's just going to be a real pain in the ass and it's going to take 4 years, maybe more. It's going to be the same story with Spencer Evans, most likely. He also is going to get a chance to do it. What they should have done is assign him to a post in Guam and told him that he's never going to come back stateside and he's never going to get promoted. They put him in to the lowest level position for his pay grade and put him where his job is to investigate federal crimes in his living room, show up every day until you retire. Because he could retire at any time. You make people retire because they didn't commit crimes. They're just not people that should be doing that job because they've been found unworthy of that work. And Driscoll, by all accounts, I don't want to claim that scalp. I think I accidentally get it, but only because he did the thing that you'd expect that real management, that real leadership would do. You'd say, no, you've asked me to do something illegal, unlawful, against policy. Imagine somebody telling Garrett O'Boyle's former boss when they said, hey, you need to transfer this guy to a unit and then we're going to cancel him mid-transfer. And imagine if there was a boss that had a pair of balls that just said, absolutely not. This man just had a baby. That's against policy to transfer him in the first place. We're not going to do that. I won't do it. And then got fired for it. That person would be a hero. The people in the FBI are looking at Brian Driscoll as a hero. And they're not wrong about him doing the right thing. So Kash and Dan have now set up a resistance, and they have actually given themselves some martyrs who are actually the right human beings. So he's 100% correct on being looked at the right way. He didn't create those challenge coins of himself sitting at the Resolute desk. Alex Jones and I covered this last week. He didn't create that legend. They did. What would the Driz do and all this stuff? The fact of the matter is, if you're a good person, people build a cult of personality around it. The FBI is very short on decent leadership, and they just blew it. So now you've created this real problem. And I don't like it. I don't like it any more than any of you would. There's a real issue when our law enforcement is weaponized. It's the thing that I've been campaigning against. And so people like those on the left and I are going to say the same things. We're going to be talking about the same problems. Why is the FBI not actually doing the job that we actually should be re-adjudicating from 2020? You know, like a stolen election that was like front and center. We're not fixing that. It seems like the only person who's doing it is Tulsi Gabbard. I had a request from one of you guys, one of my listeners, that said, if you're going to play canned ads, can you please give us an opportunity to know that it's coming? So for those of you that are listening to Spotify, if you're listening to Apple, iHeartRadio, if you're listening audio only, or if you're listening over on Spotify, you may now hear one of the canned ads that comes in from our monetization program. Appreciate that. And we'll come back right from that. And then here we are with this. Let me play you Tulsi Gabbard, who's actually seems to be one of the few people in the Trump administration on the sort of intel side that's actually locked in to the issue. J.D. Vance seems to get it too. So let these people be the mouthpieces. Let this be the way that the party goes for the next 18 months and not the Lindsey Graham end of it. I pray that that's the case. Here she is on the Benny Show talking about what actually makes sense. And I don't know if this is going to be synced up or out of sync, unfortunately.
You made a comment at a cabinet secretary meeting that has stuck with our audience, and they'd really love an update on it. And it's about the 2020 election. And you were talking about the security of that election, and you were telling President Trump that there has been evidence that has been uncovered of potential breaches. I'm not exactly certain, but I'd love a follow-up on this. Here's the moment right here, and perhaps do you have any updates on the 2020 election or anything that you've found, Director?
The point that I was making there in the cabinet meeting was early discovery that I had seen from a whistleblower who came forward, who was working under CISA at that time, which is responsible for critical infrastructure and trying to protect against cyber vulnerabilities, critical infrastructure, including, of course, the integrity of our election systems. And what was interesting was seeing how this whistleblower brought forward information that CISA at that time, the federal government, was aware of vulnerabilities in our election machines, but they chose not to disclose that information to the American people or to the administration at that time.
Okay, so what vulnerabilities were these again? Remember the entire problem about Dominion? One of my buddies, Joe Altman, constantly harps on this. This is his single biggest issue. He says if you don't fix the election problem, it doesn't matter what else you do in the short term because you're not going to be able to win elections. Somebody else is going to be controlling that. This was a discussion that happened. How many of us have forgotten this? This is from December of 2020. This is just after the election in November of 2020. It doesn't sound like this has been addressed. This seems like this would be critical stuff. It's actually far more important than Epstein files, which may or may not have anything salacious at all. Like the actual mechanism and infrastructure. That's the problem. Again, the rot is so big that you can't come in with a scalpel and try to fix little problems. Oh, can we find one case agent who's wrong? No. How about all the people that refused to do investigations into this question?
Voting systems are, by design, meant to be used as closed systems that are not networked, meaning they are not connected to the internet. There is no internet connectivity at all. They are not designed to be connected to the outside world through either an internet connection or any other external connectivity device.
Dominion have any way to remotely access any of the information on any of the equipment or have remote access within the machines themselves?
No.
Does anybody have access to the best of your knowledge?
No. Voting systems are,
by design, they're meant to be secure. They're not supposed to be accessible from the outside. That's been proven over and over again, including in hearings like in front of our federal government. Why are they not fixing that? Shouldn't that be like a front and center question? It turns out that and using the federal government, again, an infrastructure question, when you use the federal government to get a political outcome, which is terrifying. Isn't that the number one? And why is Tulsi Gabbard the only one involved in this? Why do we hear Dan Bongino and Kash Patel out there touting like, we arrested 1,000 terrorists? Well, you arrested a gang member and you've redefined them to be terrorists. So you're juking the terrorist stats, the same problem that Steve Friend called out. You might as well be saying, we're arresting domestic terrorists. They're just J6ers and grandmas. It's the same thing the Biden administration did. It's a different focus. Our team is involved, so we're supposed to cheer for it. but you're not doing the work. You'll notice that they'll always tell you what they did, and they won't compare it against the previous year. Like, oh, we got all these child sex traffickers. We got 270 of them. Okay, well, how many did you get last year by August? Oh, it's the same amount or more? Why don't you show growth, that you've turned and made this a focus? Why don't you explain to the American people that it's become a priority and that you've tiered it as a tiered national threat? I don't think they have. And there's no evidence that anyone's told me that they have. Here's J.D. Vance saying what the real problem was, and what you don't see is fixing that. What you see is, we got rid of one of the case agents who locked up Peter Navarro. Like, that's great. That's a scalpel. What's needed is a cleaver or a machete to start lopping off limbs if you want to save the body. We need a significant amputation, far enough up that it doesn't spread. And that means you're going to have to cut back really aggressively, as my friend told me this morning.
I absolutely want to see indictments, Maria. Look, of course, you've got to have the law follow the facts here. You don't just indict people to indict people. You indict people because they broke the law. But if you look at what Tulsi and Kash Patel have revealed in the last couple of weeks, I don't know how anybody can look at that and say that there wasn't aggressive violations of the law. What they basically did is they defrauded the American people in order to take Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points and turn them into intelligence by defrauding the American people, defrauding the intelligence agencies, lying about what the intel said. They would take something that supported a Hillary Clinton campaign talking point, and they would overemphasize it and exaggerate it. They took anything that actually contradicted that narrative and they buried it deep. And through that, they actually laundered Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points through the American intelligence services. That's a violation of the people's trust. That's a violation of what our intelligence services should be doing. And I absolutely think they broke the law. And you're going to see a lot of people get indicted for that. Here's the thing that should really bother the American people. What do you want our intelligence community to be doing? I want them to be catching bad guys. I want them to be making sure that terrorists aren't going to kill innocent American civilians. I don't want them laundering Hillary Clinton's campaign talking points into the American media and giving them this air of legitimacy. It is sick. And it's disgusting. It hurt the intelligence community, it hurt the American people, and it hurt the first Trump administration. We've got to have consequences for it, or we're just going to see the same play repeated again and after again.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's sort of true. I actually don't want the intelligence service going after bad guys. Why is that? Because intel is inherently, by its very nature, it's intelligence. So it's political. It has an opinion, and the people who gather it have like an editorial bias, the same way that you guys might pick your news source. And the intel people are people like Spencer Evans. This is what he wrote yesterday or the day before. When I started the week, I didn't know that Friday would be my last day in the FBI. This morning, I'm filled with gratitude for a 21-year career that was beyond anything I could have ever dreamed of. From serving coast to coast in New Haven and San Diego and Jacksonville and Oklahoma City and Las Vegas divisions, with 2 FBI headquarters tours in the middle, I'm taking a quiet moment to reflect on the incredible people I've had the privilege to work for and among. I've long believed in the metaphor of God as an all-knowing gardener who prunes us and shapes us from time to time because he knows what he wants us to become. That's really gross. Sorry, that's one of the grossest things that I've ever read. Who are the kind of people that love that? How about Tanya here? She's a national security executive, one of those people that was part of the laundering operation. She wrote, Spencer, it was an honor to serve with you, Spencer. Thank you for all you've done for the FBI and the country. Notice the FBI comes before the country because these people have loyalty to institution before constitution. On Friday, I dropped the name of the executive special assistant to FBI Director Chris Wray and the section chief for the director's operations and security sections from July 23rd to February 2025. Again, the same time that Sarah Linden got promoted out and moved into a new job. For about a year and a half, this woman was the special assistant. A special assistant is like the closest person, confidant, advisor, sometimes mistress, not in this case that I'm aware of, but oftentimes a mistress of some senior executive. And usually what you do is you get a male senior executive that flies around on the director's jet sometimes or takes special travel, always brings the special assistant, and then they end up getting 2 rooms but only using 1. That's a very common thing in the FBI, by the way. Sexual malfeasance, things that used to get your clearance pulled. This woman that I brought you up was a woman that was called Vanessa Tibbetts. There she is. special assistant in charge of the FBI's national security and cyber. She's in strategic management in the New York field office. So she's in the most powerful FBI field office as a special agent in charge. She's the number 2 person, the number 1 for national security and cyber. Isn't that interesting? Who is this lady? Could we find anything about her? She's really hard to find information on, but it turns out that she also went to Nigeria with Chris Wray, 2024. I found a photograph. There she is right there. She's circled in the picture. She's two rows back or 1 row back in the middle. And she lives in like a 625 square foot apartment in Park Slope, Brooklyn. She's another one of these people that never married. She's married to the FBI. That is her husband. It's the most awful situation possible. My buddy said, that's the face you see when your clearance has been revoked. It's been revoked by someone like that. There you have it. So we'll talk about her on Alex Jones today. I'm just telling you, the goal has been, how do we make these people go away and stop doing it? You can't do it gently. Anybody that worked for Wray or Comey, that was promoted into senior management by Wray or Comey, should be gone. It has to happen. We've claimed some scalps. We're going to keep doing them here. It's very obvious to me that certain people inside the Bureau are paying attention, because after I named her on the podcast, within 24 hours, by Saturday morning, she had already deleted the LinkedIn account that showed her background right here. Well, we already grabbed it, hun. It's already out on the internet. So feel free to share it. You can go find it in my timeline. This is who's up next. This person was part of Chris Wray's strategy team. If you got promoted, you cannot exist anymore, because all of these people that worked in national security, they're all compromised at this point. Again, even if they're not, we're going to lose some decent people. Unfortunately, you lost Brian Driscoll. Like I said, probably a decent guy. People that I respect think he was a good person, was a good agent, was a good teammate. And he did the thing that you're supposed to do, be a good manager, stand up for your employee. You're going to lose some of that when you cut off an entire limb. We need to cut some limbs. We need to cut anything involved in national security, because these people are using tools that are incredibly dangerous. And even the left understands that this is not acceptable. This is a former Trump administration. He was a former chief of staff. I think he was at Homeland. This guy's name, Miles Taylor. He ended up writing a tell-all book. He's saying the correct thing. Even if we don't agree on politics, you cannot weaponize our government, the infrastructure part of it, and come after American citizens unfairly. You can't do it.
Look, I am reasonably confident I did not commit treason against the United States of America, the country that I've served my entire career. But that's not really what they want to do, whether it's going, against me or Attorney General James or Adam Schiff. They want to go shine a light on these people in their lives and follow them as long as possible to find the traffic infraction that they can lord over them to make their lives very, very difficult. And make no mistake, this is not for show. We're in only the early parts of this administration. The president is under enormous pressure from the MAGA base to put these people in handcuffs. It's why for years he's talked about locking them up. They now want to see it. And I'm telling you, they are going to find it. One of these newscasts, you are going to come on a Saturday, and you and I both know this, Allie, and we're going to be reporting sort of breathlessly that one of these people on this list has been put in handcuffs, has been picked up, and is in detention. We are going to cross that Rubicon during the Trump presidency. It brings me no joy to forecast that, but that's how open-eyed we need to be about this.
Newsflash, homie. Miles, they already did that. That Rubicon was crossed in August of 2022 when the FBI executed a search warrant at the former and now current president's home, right? We heard that they rifled through the current first lady's underwear drawer. That doesn't matter whether that's true or not, because they were in a position to do it. You'd think that the people who understood how flippin' dangerous that was, and I'm going to count guys like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino in it because they were part of a movie that I helped script, that I helped show the action. I choreographed all the scenes that involved FBI people along with Steve Friend. We were out there making sure that it was as real as possible so that people understood the warning. When you weaponize government, everybody loses eventually, because all this political back and forth, you're going to hammer that tennis ball back to the other side of the court. And what are they going to do with it? They're going to spike it on you the same way. So hearing them cry about that is crazy. And the allegations now are that usually what I would call projection. People on the left are crying about the idea that Trump might use the same tools that they had already used, like it's somehow a novel plan to steal an election. Again, these are the things that need to be done. The FBI should be used to investigate election fraud, find out who was involved in it, pull all the records, and actually use some of those incredible computer capabilities to do a real deep dive on what happened in 2020 so that we can have some awareness. You have to fix the root problem. Going after a Comey or a Clapper or a Brennan, that sounds cool. It's not going to happen. The statute has already expired. I don't think they're going to be able to prove a conspiracy. I don't think they can get a decent version of a grand jury that's going to go out there and go after them. This man says otherwise, by the way. This is the argument that if someone comes after you with a grand jury, that you're basically screwed. It would be almost true, except that it's not. It's scary. It's not great. How do you know, Kyle? Oh, because the grand jury's subpoenaed a lot of my social media and my Google account. This is the discussion that MSNBC's having. Again, too little, too late. We're now batting back and forth. We need to chop this capability off, not get rid of some people that were offending our sensibilities previously.
There is nothing scarier for a citizen to get a subpoena or find out that they're being investigated by a federal criminal grand jury. It's terrifying, and here's why. Grand jury investigations sweep broadly. They gather terabytes of information, and they're very efficient at going through it. And the problem there for people is that they may be investigating issue number one and then stumble across never before known issue number two when going through all those documents. That is why if somebody is the subject, the target of a grand jury investigation, that is not a good sign. So given that the federal government has such tremendous power to investigate, Letitia James should be very concerned. Not that she necessarily did anything wrong, but because that kind of scrutiny of financial records, of business records, everything going back probably years, might yield something that the government finds interesting.
Yeah, that's true. It does say something that Garrett O'Boyle and I were never indicted. I think the thing they came after us for was actually overturned by the Supreme Court. They wanted to go after an 18 USC 1512 charge from everything I heard. And that's why zeroing in and putting your energies with the FBI looking at street level crime in Washington, D.C. Are you shitting me? The Dems are already talking about election fraud and theft. I played you this the other day. I'm going to give you two different little snippets. One of them is from Hakeem Jeffries, saying the thing that I think is the quiet part out loud, what they think will happen. And then the second one is what I heard over the weekend. This is what needs to be fixed. The voting systems. The integrity of the election is far more important than whether or not there's homeless people on the streets of DC, which there have been for a long time. DC already sucks. Fix the rot cause. Go ahead and cut off the ugly limb that needs to be amputated. Stop trying to scalpel one little crappy American city.
You argued that Texas Republicans, in your words, at the urging of President Donald Trump, were trying to rig elections by allowing politicians to choose their own voters through this redistricting proposal. What do you say to the argument that Democrats would be guilty of the same charge if they gerrymandered in so-called blue states, Democratic-led states?
What Democrats would be doing in response is to make sure that there is one fair national map, so that the people of this country will have the opportunity to make a decision in November of next year in deciding who should actually serve in the majority in the United States House of Representatives. We think that Republicans are scared to death that they are on the brink of losing the House of Representatives. Republicans are trying to rig the congressional maps because they don't want to have this fight on the merits.
Got it. Okay, so Republicans are going to steal the election. Is that just one guy saying this, or is this starting to go more broadly out to the broader podcast sphere so that people on the left are now primed to think the same thing? Remember what it resulted in the last time? It resulted in a January 6th and a bunch of people having no faith in the government. Listen, if you promise MAGA people that you're going to lock a bunch of people up, as J.D. Vance said he would like to see happen, but sort of soft pedals that it's not going to happen. It's coming from Tulsi Gabbard, not from Kash Patel, right? So that's the soft sell. Then the other side believes that the election is stolen. All you're doing is you're setting up this Civil War era. This is what we talked about with George Hill and Steve Friend the other day. When people's expectations are not manifested or realized, you're going to have something really, really dangerous. And now you're going to set the precedent of putting FBI agents out in the street. Does anyone see this going well? We've already seen what that looked like in 2020.
So I want everyone to pay attention to this next thing really, really carefully. Donald Trump is doing this not because he thinks he can pull it off. Like, even logistically pulling off another census between now and 2026 would be nearly impossible. Pulling it off and then having a reapportionment. Pulling it off and then every state having to do redistricting, because if you take away seats or add seats, you have to redistrict the whole state, right? Like, none of that is going to happen. None of it would be legal, and none of it's even possible. So ask yourself, what is Donald Trump up to? This is what he's up to. He is laying the groundwork to try to steal the 2026 elections. Why is the Department of Justice collecting individual voter data on every American? Why are they going to all 50 states? Why is the criminal division of the Department of Justice going to all 50 states to try to get the voter files so they know where you live, what your social security number is, whether you're a registered Democrat or Republican, what elections you have voted in? Why are they collecting all of that information? Why is he now saying we need this massive census and reapportionment? Why does he tie it to 2024? I'll tell you why. Because when Republicans lose in 2026, he wants to be able to say, you see, we lost because we were cheated. We lost because the census was rigged. We lost because people who are not eligible to vote voted. We lost, and there are all these irregularities. So everyone needs to be paying attention to this YouTube channel, hopefully the Democracy Docket YouTube channel as well, because Brian and I cover this stuff and hopefully help you connect why what Donald Trump is doing around the census actually ties to what the Department of Justice is doing around voter lists.
Got it. Okay, yeah. Let me tell you what the Department of Justice has historically done with voter lists and what the FBI did to investigate the so-called election fraud that happened in 2020. The alleged election fraud. Nothing. They actually made a priority for 4 years under Joe Biden while they were importing 100,000 Afghan refugees who turned out to stab people that are trying to help them. When they were doing that, what they said was we're only interested in voter suppression because Democrats are the only ones who get to decide what happens. Free and fair elections should be a priority for everyone. And if you are in the vast minority, you should not want to win elections and then have to deal with a pissed off, very well armed, highly trained, GWAT veteran, capable opposition force in this country. That's how everybody gets destroyed. We're getting set up for something really dumb, which is why those of us that are paying attention are preparing again. And it doesn't seem like they're paying attention to this. They're trying to piecemeal the solution with these little nits and little bites around the edges. Machete, not scalpel. That time has passed. Sorry, that's where we're at. All right, that's today's program. That's what I have to say about that. If you want to see more of it, you can join me on Alex Jones with InfoWars. That will be happening at 3 p.m. Eastern time. It's 2 here in Texas. I'm going to drive down in studio to go hang out with him because the experience is always a little bit more. Make sure you guys are supporting our channel by subscribing to it over on YouTube and on Rumble. On X, you can be a subscriber as well. If you guys want to be a paid subscriber on Locals, that's awesome. It's kyleserafin.com. I'll give you all the articles that I referenced today, as well as some of these photographs that'll be out there. If you guys want to hit like, we appreciate that. If you want to get notified when we go live, you can skip all the ads other than what I read, which is about 2 or 3. Never more than that. You can get all that stuff by going and watching us live at 0930 Eastern time, and that is 8:30 here in Central Texas, America. I do have a palate cleanse for you today. I think we should laugh about something. The other day, you guys beat me up about this idea that fat people are not related to the number of calories they eat. It turns out that it's been fairly conclusively proven that the laws of thermodynamics, they do apply to you. Hormones be damned. If you take in less, you will lose weight if you do less than you consume by moving around. It turns out that's just the way that the laws of matter have to function. And it's really not negotiable. So for all those who wrote me after the fact, and many of you did, and some of you guys actually sent me books, and I appreciate the books, but I don't have any time to read things about how your hormones are actually going to dictate it no matter what you eat. No, there was a thing that this professor did called the Twinkie experiment. I'm going to play a little sort of snippy thing about this. If you ate nothing but 1,000 calories of donuts and you walked around in a regular American life day, you would burn more than 1,000 calories. And then not pounds, calories. If you ate 1,000 calories worth of donuts every single day, you'd lose weight. You'd probably be eventually unhealthy, but not even immediately, it turns out. a lot of your metrics would actually go into a better way. Here's your palate cleanse.
Basically said, if you ate 1,000 calories a day of just donuts, you will get fat. And I replied to the comment, I'm like, I disagree. It's purely thermodynamics.
You know someone did that, but with Twinkies to prove a point. And weight wasn't the only thing they lost. This is Mark Hobb, the professor of human nutrition at Kansas State University. And for 10 weeks, he wanted to do an experiment, eating what he called the Twinkie diet, or a diet made up of exclusively Twinkies, Oreos, Doritos, and a few other snacks, to see if he could still lose weight following the #1 rule for weight loss, eating fewer calories than you burn. He found that he burned about 2,600 calories per day, and even though it was junk food, he made sure to eat only 1,800 calories per day. And after 10 weeks of doing this, he lost 27 pounds, and his body fat dropped from 33% down to 24%. But that's not really surprising. What comes next is, not only did his weight drop, his bad cholesterol also dropped by 20%, and his good cholesterol went up by 20%. His triglycerides lowered by almost half, and his blood pressure fell from being in stage 1 hypertension down to a normal, healthy level. Listen to what I'm about to say. Calories matter, but they are not the only thing that matters. No one is telling you to eat like this. All this is showing is that you don't have to be perfect to be healthy. Having some unhealthy foods in a mostly healthy diet isn't a bad thing, and it doesn't make you unhealthy.
All right, so there you have it, folks. Look, this has been done. You can go back and type in Twinkie diet anywhere you like. If you want to do it on YouTube, you can see some news coverage of it. If you type it into Google, you'll get some articles that were written about it at the time. Calories in, calories out, that's really the simple measure of it. It doesn't have the total metric for health. No, what it says is that you can eat some junk and still be okay, or you could be a savage and just do total meat like my buddy Steven Stambolia, and you'll lose 100 pounds because that's how it works. The quality of calories matter, but at the end of the day, the quantity is very important. If you want to write to the show, you can always do that at 9073 West State Highway 29, Suite 110, Box 509, Liberty Hill, Texas, 78642. That's for those of you who want to send me a postcard or a letter that disagrees with this conclusion, which has been out there for a long time. Anyway, it's available to you if you guys are so inclined. I appreciate all the people that want to connect with us, whether it's online or offline. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and God bless you. I look forward to making this week interesting. I think we're going to start off with one already.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.